Uni President Joe de Bruyn, General Secretary Philip and your colleagues in the Uni Global team, Minister Patel, General Secretary Sharon Burrow of the ITUC, General Secretary Zelenzima Vavi of COSATU, delegates and fellow guests at this Uni World Indaba. I hope you're going to sympathize with me. You have to agree that the previous speaker was the ultimate in the impossible act to follow. So I just have to do my best. I'm going to bring you the greetings of the International Labour Organization, my particular gratitude for being able to come back home to Uni and speak to you today and to be back in South Africa. It's always an inspiration. Sisters and brothers, every speaker to date has invoked the historic figure of Nelson Mandela, and many more of you will in the coming 3 days, I'm sure. And I'm not going to be left out, not in the presence of legends of the long road to freedom who are with us today, Ahmed Kathrada, Emma Mashinini. And my contribution is to recall to you what Nelson Mandela said when he came to the ILO conference. It was in June of 1990. He said, and I'll quote, that despite the thickness of the prison walls, all of us in Robben Island could hear your voices demanding our release. We thank you that you refused to forget us and that you did not tire of our struggles. End of quote. Sisters and brothers, today, the struggle for social justice, for fairness at work, for decent jobs, maybe looks a bit different from that struggle of the inmates on Robben Island. But it continues, and it still requires that we show the same qualities of solidarity, that we do not forget those working people who need the strength of trade unionism, and that you do not tire in your efforts to bring organization to them. And that's what Uni is doing, including you, including everybody who needs to be included in the movement and in the world of work. Because the message that millions are getting from the world of work today is that we can do without you, or we will exclude you from the benefits of the global economy. 200 million without jobs, many more underemployed or working informally, and a global economy still struggling to climb out of the cataclysm of the global financial crisis. Last week, Philip, this was for you, the ILO published its global wage report. And it shows what all of you know, what working people around the world are feeling, that real wage growth continues to slow. It's practically stagnant in most of the developed world. And productivity is still outstripping wages. And that means that more of the incomes that our countries are creating are going to profits and less are going to wages. And that's why our societies have reached such alarming levels of inequality. And yet, even these historically high levels of profit are failing to kickstart investment that we need for jobs and for growth. Why? Because the demand is simply not there. Conclusion, these are all good arguments for why the world needs a raise. And when the G20 leaders met last month, they did make growth and quality jobs their highest priority. But to do so, they need to listen to your arguments. Sisters and brothers, we know the obstacles in the way of progress. We see how policies aimed exclusively at competitiveness, structural reform, debt reduction can take us in the wrong direction. And that takes us directly to the issues that you are addressing here at this Congress. The need to strengthen the bargaining power and the voice of trade unions. We know that all too often conditions have continued to erode trade union membership. Globalization, technology, politics, structural transformation. But that only reinforces the imperatives of the international organizing agenda that the ITUC is putting at the center of trade union internationalism. And UNI's role in that is not easy, but it's crucial, because your sectors, whilst they contain plenty of problems, plenty of antibodies, which will activate to combat the virus of organizing, your sectors are the ones still where the jobs of the future are to be found and where the trade unions of the future need to establish their base camp. And I want to say that it's obvious from the truly excellent documentation presented to this Indaba that UNI is tackling the challenge of organizing in the private service sector. You're doing it systematically, you're doing it concretely, you're doing it strategically, and you're doing it successfully. And I want to congratulate you on those achievements. President, delegates, I already mentioned Nelson Mandela's visit to the ILO's conference. 9 years after him, it was the turn of President Bill Clinton. In his address, he reminded us all that globalization, in his words, was not a policy proposal, not an option, but a reality. And so it has proved. We can and we must shape and manage globalization, but it's not going away, and we need to understand that. And one consequence is that your organizing work also needs to go global. Purely national trade union responses to the worldwide strategies of the corporate actors that you are faced with have the most obvious limitations, even if industrial relations is still mostly framed by national legislation, national practices, and national institutions. And so here again, innovation and creativity is at a premium. And again, UNI leadership is there for all to see, not least in the negotiation of international framework agreements. And let me tell you how proud the ILO has been to work with UNI, with your colleagues in Industrial, to build a credible and effective international response to the tragedy that took over the lives of over 1,100 young garment workers in Rana Plaza in Bangladesh in April of last year. Together, UNI and Industrial have led an international campaign which has cut new ground and done something which few could have believed achievable. Having international retailers accept legal and financial responsibility for the conditions in the factories where they source in Bangladesh. The ILO is working with you in the Accord. We're administering a trust fund for the compensation of victims, and we will continue until justice is done to the victims of Rana Plaza and future victims are saved from that fate. Delegates, the ILO is just 5 years away from its centenary, and we've decided to launch a number of centenary initiatives so that the organization can enter its second 100 years of fighting for social justice, faithful to that mandate and equipped to undertake it effectively. I just want to share, to close my comments, some information about some of the initiatives that we want you to be a part of. We think they're very important for trade unionism. We think they're important for the ILO. We think they're important for our collective future together. One of our initiatives is looking at women at work. What we want to do is to answer the question, which we all need to ask: of why, after decades of legislation, decades of advocacy for equal pay and against gender discrimination, the gender pay gap worldwide is still around 20% and shows no signs of closing, and why women's participation rates in our labour forces are about 25 percentage points below those of men. What do we need to do? More of the same or something different? Help us to answer that question. And then we have something, an initiative which is not a utopia, not a dream, but a common responsibility. The initiative to put an end to extreme poverty in the world. Next year, the United Nations will adopt its post-2015 development agenda with exactly that aim, to consign extreme poverty to the dustbin of history. That's your job. That's our job. We must put decent work for all at the center of that struggle to end extreme poverty. And colleagues, we have a green initiative. You're probably aware that after UNI's Congress, the most important international meeting taking place in the world today, are the climate change negotiations in Lima, Peru. Let's be clear. This is trade union business. Anybody who still thinks that we have to choose between jobs on the one hand and protecting the environment on the other has lost the plot. Our job is to ensure a just transition which reconciles the future of our planet with the future of working people. Decent work for all in a sustainable future. And the last thing I want to mention is something which chimes very, very well with your Congress's examination of the new world of work. All of you as trade union representatives have to deal with the problems that arise every day, every week, every month. And it is difficult to just look to the horizon, to try to work out what the mega drivers of change in the world of work are and what they mean for all of us in the future. Not tomorrow, but maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line, and how the trade union movement needs to prepare to be equal to those changes and those challenges. So the big story for the ILO's birthday in 2019 will be our work on the future of work. My last words are to invite you, to include you in our reflection on the future of work. Please join us in plotting out the future. Brothers and sisters, that's all from me. Good luck in the next 3 days. I trust that when it comes to the 5th World Uni Congress, Philip, you will choose a city as your venue, as beautiful, as inspiring as is Cape Town here this week. Good luck to you all.